All right. Well, I'm here with Michael Young, President of Canada Beef. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about you, and then we're going to kind of get into the topic of grading as well, because it's something that I think is really not understood by a lot of people. But, first and foremost, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey. Were you always interested in food and butchering?
Yeah, well, first, yeah, good morning, Stephen. I have to say, from very early, even in high school, I was interested in cooking, and I really thought I was going to be a chef. But back in those days, it was called a commercial cook, and I was heavily influenced by my grandmother, my German grandmother, who often told me that if I really want to be happy in life, I should become a sausage maker because in the old country where she came from, of course, sausage makers have quite a high position in society. So it kind of stuck in, and I went to visit a local sausage shop that was run by two Swiss, actually a Swiss and a German partner, and I talked to Chef Uli Naif about becoming a sausage maker, and he said, yeah, you could. We're looking and you can start, but you need to start in the back room. Now, the back room was an abattoir, which was a multi-species processing plant. So really, that's how it started. The path was to be a sausage maker, but to get there, I had to start in the processing side of the business. So that was a bit of a surprise.
That's wild. That's awesome. Was your family generally supportive of you going into, because obviously with your grandmother, what did the rest of the family think about going into that?
Well, mom would have preferred me to go into the culinary side of it right off the bat, I think. But grandma, I don't know, she was pretty convincing, and I really liked the idea of it. Like this was in the mid '70s, so and they were fairly supportive. I mean, when you're really young, you try things and then you move on, and that's what happened to me because I did that. I worked my way through the processing side, got into the sausage kitchen, and spent 3 years training under these two Europeans, and it was awesome. But at the end of it, I realized I'm going to make $12 an hour. That's all I'm going to do. So I decided I better go back to night school. So that's when I started to take marketing courses. So that's really when one door kind of led into another, and that's really what really opened it up for me.
Okay, awesome. So before we kind of maybe like stray off of butchering a little bit, do you have any interesting butchering story that you can share?
Oh, I have a lot. I have a lot of butchering stories, depending on where. So my career has been split in between the pork and the cattle industry, almost exactly 50-50. So I literally have been, working all over the world. So both segments had me in the export sort of division. So I was working all over the world. So I think what's probably interesting is, well, to me anyway, some of the things I thought was fundamental that I learned, working at Alpine Meats and through the industry, which I thought was everybody knew that. I just thought all meat processing people know this stuff. And then you don't realize that, boy, it's a completely different education when you're not working with Europeans. And what I found was once I started to get out in different markets like Russia and Japan and China, and you realize a lot of the things you learn that Canada was already doing is so far advanced. So it really became a benefit for me to bring this knowledge to them. So I ended up doing some of the stuff I never thought after, getting a degree in marketing and spending all this time in economics and agricultural sciences. And I laugh some days when I'm in a plant in Moscow, so it's kind of interesting how you're training and what you think you're training for, but it always goes back to the fundamentals.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So a question now during COVID times, right? Like I've seen, one of the interesting things I think farmers now are selling more direct to consumers, right? Consumers are having better relationships with butchers, so it's becoming kind of a more symbiotic system, right? So in Canada specifically, like how do you see right now the connection between kind of farmers, butchers, and the public? Do you think it's something that is evolving? Do you think that's there's still room to connect more? What would you like to kind of see happen between those three key components?
Well, I think the relationship has always been symbiotic. It's been growing over the years. Obviously, obviously kind of jaded by the different socioeconomic trends. So, you see the older folks, older people, the boomers who were the larger meat consumers, and now we see the millennials, the Gen Xers, and all the young people come up. So definitely there is a challenge for all commodity groups to communicate with the younger generations, which we're all working on different tools to do that. But I do see that growing, and I think COVID has really done a reset for the industry, and in that more people were obviously eating at home. They were rediscovering a lot of the appliances they may have gotten as a gift or a wedding present that they just never used. And all of a sudden, with food service shutting down and changing, and you can only eat so much takeout, people started to rediscover their kitchens and cooking and the love of it. And, there was also a huge trend on the foodie side of it. So, the food networks have done an excellent job promoting, culinary arts, and butchering and sausage making has kind of water skied behind that and become a bit of a craft trade again, which is nice to see. It's nice to see that coming back into it. So I would say we're in a, strangely to say, we're in a really good place right now. People are definitely back at the table. They've always been hungry. It's just, where are they going to get their food? And consumption figures were just released in May, which was quite interesting to us. We were looking to see what happened in 2020 with consumption. We know consumers shifted from food service to retail, and we know that retail saw double-digit increases. But we didn't know, there was other factors involved. And when the numbers were finally released, I think it was total red meat and poultry consumption across the board was actually down 4.5%. Pork was the heaviest hit. Even chicken went down. But strangely enough, beef maintained its market share and actually had a marginal increase, which, is quite positive when you think about it. Canadians literally voted with their stomach to maintain their, the level of which they buy and consume beef. And so that's quite positive. And, considering we're at near record high prices, beef is not cheap. It never has been, but we're at near record high prices. Plus, there was some perceptions of supply disruptions and that. So there was a lot of, wild factors out there, but yeah, it was quite positive. So we're trying to build on that, and we're creating tools that will help to maintain that momentum moving forward.
Awesome. Well, I can definitely say from a statistics standpoint, I've done my fair share to help contribute to that.
Appreciate that.
It's awesome. So, let's get on the topic of grading, because grading is something that I think people really don't understand. So maybe can we just kind of start with just how does beef grading work, and why is it important for people to understand grades of beef?
Sure. Yeah. And, a lot of people do confuse safety grading, like food inspection type inspection, with grading, and they're completely different. So first, all animals processed in Canada in a provincial or a federally inspected plant have to be approved from a food safety point of view. So that's regulated. It is not optional. You must do this. So once the animals have been processed and they've been approved, then processors then use the Canadian Beef Grading Agency as a optional contract provider to then assess the meat quality factors of the carcass. And this is important because we export over 40% of our production around the world, and we compete against some of the other best beef suppliers in the world. So having a grading system provides the grades that determine the quality level that people are looking for, the value level that people are looking for different segments. So it's very important. So, the Canadian Beef Grading Agency, that this is a service that is provided after inspection. It's an optional service. You're not required to grade. However, almost all markets that we sell into require grading so that they know what they're buying. And it's really assurance to know that what they're getting in that box is going to meet those expectations.
Okay, interesting. So for now, the grading, if I'm getting this correct, is more for the exporting side of things versus the okay.
No, it actually started. It was developed actually well, there's always been a quality grading system. The old grading system, which was single A, just Canada 1, 2, and 3, that was pre-92. And it's funny, the trends were sort of going down. At the time, the consumer trends were to leaner meat. So slowly people were moving more towards leaner meat. Unfortunately, this is affecting the flavor of the product. So the consumption wasn't going well. So back in 92, they changed the system to follow some aspects of the US system that now focuses in on marbling. And marbling, Stephen, is a small white flecks of fat within the intermuscular fat that really brings a lot of flavor to it. People kind of get confused and they think, well, that's going to make the meat fatty, but it's really not. It's barely over 10% more for the marbling, but it brings that flavor and it brings that texture and that juiciness that you really want in a steak. So really that's why. And it was incorporated back in 92 for that reason, and exports were just starting out.
Okay.
So grading is done for all markets.
Okay. And so locally, like, what does each grade stand for? So like, what is the difference between, prime and AAA, and what should we be looking out for from a consumer perspective when we're going in? Because I know a lot of times, like, if, even for myself, if I'm going in, I see prime or I see AAA, I don't really understand what that means. And more I'm looking, for something that's maybe local or with the specific cuts. So maybe can you kind of expand a little bit, I guess, on the grading, and again, what each grade kind of represents and what we should be looking for from a consumer standpoint?
We have four top quality grades. That's single A, double A, triple A, and prime. There's also 4B grades that cover more commercial quality, but the majority of the beef consumed in the retail and food service sector are within those 4A grades, so to speak. Now, the grading system, the A grading system, focuses in on 6 primary factors that determine the quality. They include, the most important one, of course, is marbling, but also the maturity of the animal, the meat color, the fat color, the muscling, and the texture, which is the firmness of that. So these are all really important factors when you're assessing quality. Right now, the majority of our production now falls into AAA and prime. That accounts for almost 72% of our production that's graded falls within that level. And that's where most people are looking for. But the AA grade represents about 25% of our production, and that fits. It's all great beef. It's just that as you go up, so from single A to double A to triple A to prime, you're increasing the marbling score. Gotcha. And for some, that is what they're looking for. So if you're in a super high-end exclusive steakhouse, they're going to target the prime grade, which only really represents now, well, we're just under 5%, which is a huge increase. We've actually increased year over year, which is amazing that we're that high. So prime would be about just under 5%. AAA is 67% right now, and it's been growing year over year over year. Now, I remember in 92 when they first started grading, and the AAA came out at only 18% of our production back in 92. And I remember Costco and Superstore, as soon as it was available, they locked it up and caused a big wrinkle in the business. And that sent an economic message to everybody. Everybody wants AAA or higher. Let's get going. And the industry really pulled together and started to produce that quality. So over the year, each year, that percentage of AAA and prime got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it continues to grow today.
Interesting. So what were the changes like then specifically in the practices that now allowed us to, to sort of elevate to this level?
Yeah, so we've always focused now, as I said before, pre-92, the consumer trends all said that consumers want lean animals. And to produce leaner animals, you focus in on some of the breeds that bring that to the table. So we call those the continental breeds. So a lot of the producers were using a lot of the genetics they were using in their herds were these continental breeds that were delivering a leaner product because that's what they believed the market was looking for. When it was established that we're going to move towards a AAA, then there was a shift to more of the British breeds, like some of the more famous ones like Angus and Hereford, but there are many, and then there are blends that go within those. So it's really a shift in genetics at the seed stock level. But then also the nutritional inputs and the processing system is important. So what you feed them, how you care for them, how do you farm them and bring them to market are extremely important. So that's really what was the shift. We shifted from less continental, more British breeds, and then the nutritional inputs focusing in on grain finishing, either corn or barley, depending on the country or part of the country you're in, to give the processors the kinds of animals they're looking for.
Okay. So now if we're kind of like future forecasting, where do you see it going? Like, where are the trends going? Do you feel that they're going to kind of continue in the current patterns?
I think we're going to continue to see a higher growth in more marbled cattle. We're seeing the demand now has gone beyond the domestic requirements now in all of our export markets. They are now looking for, like the markets we're in, the segments we're in there, like Japan, some of the high-end markets in China, Taiwan, Korea, they're all looking for higher marbled beef. So the value is there. So that's sort of the economic incentive to line up your delivery system and also, we know retail sector, they don't all want, but most of them are looking for a AAA or a prime program as well to compete with restaurants. And of course, restaurants have always wanted the higher end AAA and prime. So I do see the trend continuing. I think people are starting to discover just how good, Canadian beef is. And really it is one of the best, it is one of the best beef products in the world. We compete with all the majors in our category in all markets around the world. And, we get rave reviews when we're there.
Awesome. Okay, so just one last question then on grading. Now, if more Canadians become aware of the beef grading system in Canada, how do you see this like affecting the market? From beef farmers and ranchers, kind of right through.
I think so. And it is a symbiotic system, and it's also based on rewards. So to go to the next level, the industry needs to pass on some of the profits. So there are times when there is a gap between the live cattle price and the cost or the selling price of boxed beef. So I think these gaps need to be shortened, and I think they are taking steps as to ban. I mean, the meat processing industry, they listen to their customers who pay for the product. So as demand grows for higher marbled, higher quality beef, then they're going to go to their supply partners to ask them for these kinds of animals. And that takes major investments from farmers and ranchers to make these changes. Genetic investments in genetics and feed are very expensive. So as this process moves forward and the producers and ranchers can be paid fairly, I believe this will continue to grow. So we very much look at the percentages in the US to follow it. We have the same minimum marbling standards as the US, but in the other aspects that I mentioned, Canada has a slightly more stringent selection system. So, we do offer a very unique product. There are points of differentiation, but the minimum marbling scores that we use are the same as the US, and for very good reason, because we compete with them in every market outside of Canada, including inside of Canada. So it's important for us to use this particular yardstick to determine what our quality is, but then you get a little bit better, you get a little bit more in a Canadian box. And for some customers, that's important to them.
So how do you see customers then continuing their education? Like, are there resources that they can access to learn more about this and to, stay informed?
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges that we have as an organization is, we're beginning now to educate consumers about grading, and it's really important that we do so that the Canadians can fully understand what what is available to them, and perhaps why is this particular one so expensive? Because I remember when we did the research back in the day, and we showed consumers really lean strip loin steak and a really marbled strip loin steak. And every single time they will pick the lean one, every single time. And we did the same when we cooked it. So we would then cook the same steak and feed it to them. And every single time they would take the marbled steak. So there's this huge gap between what they think is great and what is actually great, you know?
Sure.
So there's a big education gap, and fortunately for me, I've got a great team of professionals. We have chefs and butchers, home economists, nutritionists, all focused on that outcome is education and training and teaching. So we're building resources and we're looking at ways to communicate to consumers about the grading system that's there, and so that they can make, you know, good choices to fit their budgets, to fit their culinary needs.
Awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of shift, and now I want to talk about, like, I want to look inside your kitchen, and I hear that you're a very good cook as well. So let's talk about beef. Like, do you have a favorite cut, and what's your favorite way to cook beef?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, most folks focus in on what we call the middle meat category, which is the loin. So sirloin, strips, and ribs. Of course, they are always good, and I like them. But I really do like some of the other cuts, like short ribs, braising. Picanha is one I've recently started cooking, which is a top sirloin cap. You know, these are all really easy to prepare. They're readily available out there. They're not called picanha, but it's, you know, top sirloin cap. You know, but there's some really interesting things that you can do. So I would say I don't really have a favorite cut, but I do tend to use a variety of different cooking methods based on where did the cut come from. The one advantage to working in so many countries, because I've been lucky enough to work over 30 countries really in the last 40 years, I've learned a lot from our customers as to what to do with our product. And, you know, and right when you think you have a good idea of what to do with it, somebody comes along with something so interesting and innovative or different. And some of them say, oh, we've been doing it this way for 70 years. So you've got to have an open mind, and your eyes always have to be, I always say the eyes eat first and then the nose follows.
Totally.
So I mean, really, with the cooking methods that you know, we've created, and minimal education, anyone can cook any of the cuts from beef quite expertly. So
do you have any kind of like inside tips or tricks for?
Well, I sort of follow. I mean, you know, grilling is always one that you know, grilling for some home chefs is a real challenge. They make quite an investment in the beef product, and of course they want to deliver an experience that's, you know, restaurant quality. So, you know, I tend to stick to the basics on grilling. I flip mine 3 times. So, you know, I do about 450 degrees to grill. You know, maybe 2.5 minutes, and then I turn it to get a nice grill mark, and then I flip it. So I find, you know, a meat thermometer for those who aren't used to it is definitely a good meat thermometer. An instant read one is a good investment for any home chef or home butcher. So I would recommend that. But, you know, some of these appliances are just amazing. Like, you know, these crock pots and pressure cookers and things that people are using now at home. You can really get a nice result.
Yeah, I've been, you know, I was obsessed for about a year with the Instapot, right?
Nice.
And the brisket was like, it was insane, like what we were making in there, and it turned out like delicious recipes that were really easy to make. So it's super exciting to get people back in.
And that's improved over the years. Like for the longest time, a lot of these cuts were what we call underutilized. So there wasn't a good market for them in Canada. So, you know, they were typically exported into countries that knew how to prepare them properly. But we're starting to see that change. And part of that is, you know, we're getting a lot of cultural diversity in Canada. We've got a lot of Asian culinary preferences coming here. So they're looking for other cuts, interesting cuts that we don't typically see. So we're seeing a lot more of cuts that used to be exported are staying home now, and they're being enjoyed by new Canadians. And also, you know, Asian Canadians as well. So
cool. So what do you think's the number one mistake that people make when cooking beef?
Couple of things. I definitely overcooking, maybe not doing the research on the best cooking method. You know, I would say do a little research on the cooking method. Overcooking is always a problem. Resting is really important for beef, especially when you're going into the thicker cuts. So it's always good to let it rest for 5 to 7 minutes after you've cooked it, to let it firm up a little bit. It makes carving it easier, and it makes enjoying it a little bit easier as well. So I would say that's that's a problem. But overall, like we've seen, I think Michelle was telling me, we've seen a 150% increase in hits on our website for recipes, over the last 15 months. So people are definitely looking for more information. They want to know. And, we've been spending a lot of time creating videos on how to cook, the short hands and pans style, sort of tasty style videos.
Yeah.
People love these. You can watch something within a minute and get all the information you need visually on how to do this. So it's a great way to communicate this information, and you can put some nice snappy music beside it. And
yeah, awesome. So now, where are your local spots? Where do you go to buy your beef, and what do you look for when you're buying beef?
Well, I'm looking for the graded product, but also I look for intermuscular fat. So I'm looking for the marbling. That's the most important thing to me. All the retail stores most of them actually, the national banners, that they all sell graded product. Some discount banners bring in offshore beef that's ungraded at a lower price, and that's fine. That's part of supply demand, and that's competition. But I avoid that. It looks good. Like I said, it's bright red, and some people will get that and then wonder why, it had no flavor or it's really, really tough. So I think it's, for me anyway, I definitely look for specific cuts, and then I look for the marbling content within those, because even within the AAA grade, it starts at a certain level and it ends at a certain level. Now, where it ends is right next to prime. So I want to get AAA that's as close to prime as possible, and I look for that visually. Now, as a consumer, you can do that. There are what we call top tier programs out there that actually select within that grade. Most of them are branded. So a great one would be Sterling Silver Beef, Certified Angus Beef, Chairman's Reserve Beef. These are all AAA programs that have been selected within the grade to identify the marbling levels that are closer to the prime grade. So you'll quite often see these brands offered, and they are legitimate and they offer a great product.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting to know,
yeah.
For sure. And then I have one last question. So what's the best beef dish you've ever had, whether it's a home cooked or a restaurant meal?
Well, I'd have to go by country. If you've ever been in Japan, yakiniku and shabu shabu is unbelievable. So yakiniku is their version of Korean barbecue. So it's small pieces of thin meat sliced about 5 to 8 millimeters, and then it's grilled at a communal barbecue with some nice sauces and usually beer. So that's that'll change your life if you've not had that. And shabu shabu is the Japanese version of hot pot, and that's really, really thin sliced, like 2 millimeters thinly sliced beef, and it's just dipped into simmering water. Literally, it's shabu shabu means swish swish in Japan. You literally dip it in 1-2 times, and then you enjoy it, and it's really good. So for Japan, that's my favorite. Now in Canada, I really like braised items. So I quite enjoy the short ribs that a lot of restaurants are doing now. Also, buko from a veal category is always a favorite. In fact, I cook also buko at home quite often. In fact, we're having it actually Saturday night, as a matter of fact. yeah. But it's so versatile. Stir fry, and the Asian way of doing stir fry is quite a bit different from the North American way, and that's another opportunity for us, is to train consumers to treat their stir fry like it's treated in Asia, which is it's by cut and by the kind of stir fry and what you're adding to it. So there's a lot more thought goes into it than just slices of beef that are left over, that some are tender and some might not be quite as tender. So
that's interesting. Yeah. And you're going to be on my food trivia team from now on, because I was actually just watching a game show last night and they talked about shabu shabu and nobody knew on the game show what that was. So,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to try it, if you're in Toronto, I'm sure there's some places that you can try it.
Yeah.
It really is a unique experience. And I've been enjoying it. Like when I go to Japan, I have a list of things I have to enjoy. Another thing is just a good old fashioned cheeseburger done right.
Yeah.
I'm still a huge fan of the cheeseburger. So, I'm always looking for, the operations that can offer me, especially on the food service side, really good quality patty, and then everything to go around it that tastes great. So
Totally, totally. Um, Before we wrap up, we were talking a little bit earlier about the Beef Information Gateway. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
sure. So essentially, over the last 15 months, we've been very busy, really retooling, repositioning, and pivoting our programs and services to fit in here. And what sort of made sense to us was it's kind of the resurgence of the use of QR codes, especially with millennials and Gen Xers and the younger generations who are always on their handheld devices. So we realized, wouldn't it be cool if we could, take a QR code and attach it to every beef cut? So we kind of kicked it around, and the team said, yeah, we could probably do that. We've got a huge library of stuff we've been producing for almost 50 years. Next year, we'll be 50 years old. We've been doing this. So we got the idea to start building this menu. So we did this. We created what we call the Canadian Beef Information Gateway. We've assigned a QR code for every single beef cut we could imagine. And we came up with, I think, the first 25 retail ones. And then we're working on our second 25. And then we got another 50 we're going to do. So every beef cut you could possibly imagine is going to have its own QR code. When you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a site, and you could look at nutritional information, preparation information, nutrition, how to cook it, videos, all of this while you're standing at the retail counter trying to decide if you're going to buy this cut or not. So we're in the process now of rolling out the program. Some of the larger national retailers are very interested in education of this kind. So we knew the program was going to be a hit. So for us, we believe it to be a game changer, and it'll be a way for us to connect with these younger consumers, gives them all the information they need to choose beef more often and to enjoy a wider repertoire of beef items, because that's really what it comes down to. It's an expensive investment. You want to have all the information you need, and now you can do it on your device. You could even look at a digital flyer on your computer before you go into the store, scan the QR code if it's offered to you, and make a decision on this particular cut if you wish to.
I think you hit the nail on the head with knowledge, right? Knowledge
Yeah.
is really power. And, conversations like this, conversations that we've had with cattle farmers and ranchers, they really kind of connect people to it. And again, the more people understand and the more people learn, the better it really is for everyone and the more vested they are in the product. So, you know what, it's great to see that rolling out. So just in closing, I'm going to leave you. What's one key message that you would like people to know about beef before we wrap up?
Well, I think if I was to summarize it, I would think that Canada really puts up a super high quality product. It perhaps Canadians take it for granted a little bit, but when you get outside of Canada and you realize what the rest of the world is looking for and how high of quality they consider Canadian beef, it's really encouraging to know that the beef that's offered here in Canada, it's not a lower price, it's a higher quality item, but it is worth it. There's been a lot of investment that goes into it, a lot of care, a lot of focus on production and processing, and then fabrication through the distribution channel. So we've got a great product. We believe now we have a new way of communicating with the younger generation, so we're going to focus in on giving them all the information they need to enjoy our product. And we'll continue to bring the facts forward, because there is a lot of noise out there about, other plant-based alternatives, and that's fine. That's just competition in the marketplace. Plant-based protein's been around over 1,000 years. It's always been there, and it's important, and it does fill a gap, but there's a large population that is looking for a single source protein. They don't want to see 27, 28, ingredients to build this meal. That's an ultra processed product. Whereas, you can look to things like beef, where you've got a single source of protein, which is a nutritionally packed product that brings a lot of attributes to the table. So if you've gone away from beef, I would suggest you rediscover beef. Give us opportunity to give you the information you need and see what you think. Maybe you can you'll be like the rest of the world and really enjoy our product.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. It was a real pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks for sharing all of this vast knowledge that you have, and hopefully this is like the first of many conversations we can have together.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you have a great
one.
day.
You too.